Good evening. I'd like to call to order the virtual regular meeting of the Lakewood City Council in Lakewood, Colorado on April 12th, 2021 at 7 p.m. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Paul.
Here.
Abel.
Here.
Vincent.
Here.
Gutwein.
Here.
Ida.
Here.
Skilling.
Here.
Thank you. Springsteen.
Here.
Franks.
Here.
Johnson.
I am here.
LeBure.
Here.
Harrison.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great. Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting this evening. The phone number for tonight's public comment is 1-253-215-8782. Webinar ID is 953-1566-5659 and then pound. After you enter the ID, or after that ID, you press pound and then press pound once again to join the meeting. *9, and I'll repeat this, *9 to request to speak and *6 to unmute. And we appreciate you joining us. I'd ask that you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll remain standing for a moment of silent prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you very much. So moving right along, Ms. Hodson, do you have an executive report this evening? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I'm going to go to public comment. Forgive me, that'll give you a chance in case you didn't have anything prepared. But we'll go to public comment, and then also, as we've had to do every regular meeting, we will address our emergency declaration. So this is the point in the meeting where the public is invited to address the City Council items that did not appear on the agenda. All comments should be directed to the City Council. I ask that all persons calling in observe the same decorum of a City Council meeting held in person and in chambers. When the clerk calls on you, if you give us your name and address or ward, I will start your 3 minutes and then let you know when there's 30 seconds left, and then you'll hear my little timer go off. Before you go there, I would just like to remind folks that there are opportunities tonight for public comment on resolutions under the consent agenda and on second reading ordinances other than item 12, ordinance 2020-10, which is the student living definition. There's no public comment on that this evening. That had taken place at our last regular meeting. So with that, Mr. Clerk.
3379.
Good evening, 3379. Give us your name and address or ward. *6 to unmute. We'll get you going.
Hello, did you call for a 3379? I thought I heard that.
Yep, you are good to go.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Mayor and Council. Thank you for your service and for your time this evening. My name is Katie Gill. I actually live in Morrison. I've spoken with you a couple of times about this issue that I'm concerned with, the Bear Creek Lake reallocation proposal, which would dramatically increase the volume of the reservoir in a reallocation of use from flood control to water storage. As you know, the official feasibility study was suspended in late 2019 and is expected to begin in the next few months. This past November, the Army Corps of Engineers completed a risk assessment of the dam in order to determine viability of proceeding with the reservoir expansion. And I recently received a memorandum which summarizes the results of that study. I sent it to Director Newland earlier today, and I also emailed you all with that study. and with these comments. Two alternatives were looked at, a 10,000 and a 20,000 acre-foot additional storage allocation. This is an increase from a current maximum of 2,000. So 2,000 to 20,000 acre feet. Both alternatives would result in increased flood risk. Obviously, the consequences of a dam failure would be tremendous, but the abbreviated study maintains that the risk is below tolerable limits. However, the study also found that significant infrastructure investments would be required to mitigate the increased flood risk. And it further called out the risk of undertaking a reallocation study that may recommend trading dam safety for water supply. Recall the primary municipal partners in this project are the cities of Brighton, Berthoud, and Dacono. So our risk, their benefit. Dam safety issues are what led to the initial suspension of the reallocation study. The Colorado Water Conservation Board did not want to invest in an expensive feasibility process without reasonable assurance that the project would not be derailed by flood risk. This recent assessment does not completely alleviate that concern. Nevertheless, it's my understanding that the official feasibility study is still in the works. Even if flood risk is reasonably mitigated, the impact to the park would be devastating. Nearly a mile of Bear Creek and half a mile of Turkey Creek would be deforested and intermittently inundated. These riparian zones are really the heart and lungs of the park. They include numerous trails and an irreplaceable ecosystem. I understand that your leverage is limited. I know that the Corps owns the park, but as the public process ensues, I appreciate your continued vigilance in monitoring the situation. And I thank you again for your time this evening.
Next, we have 6636.
Evening 6636. If you give us your address and ward, we'll get you going. And you can press *6 to unmute. Caller 6636, you are up. If you press *6 to unmute.
Hello,
Good evening.
City Councilman and Mayor.
Good evening.
Yes, my name is Michael, and actually I'm a resident of Denver, which borders, and I'm actually in West Denver, just on the border of Lakewood. And I happen to do a lot of my shopping in the city of Lakewood, and I have a lot of family members there. Now, I just wanted to say that I support City Councilman Anita Springsteen on her proposal on getting body cams for our law enforcement. And I just think it would be a great accountability. I've known City Councilman Anita Springsteen for many years, since elementary school. She has a great heart, great character, and she's just always looking out for the best interest in our law officers and also looking for the best interest in our communities. I just think moving forward with that would only better help, better training, a better accountability. And I just want to say thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for calling in.
Next, we have 7651.
7651, good evening. Give us your name and ward, we'll get you going. Press *6 to unmute.
Moving forward with that would only better help, better training.
Good evening.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. Am I speaking? Am I live?
Yep, you are. If you give us your name and address or name and ward.
My name is Brent. I am currently home. And can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
Awesome. As for concerns to present to the city council, and I have two. I have a good friend that has suffered police, as I see it, injustice, basically a lack of empathy and caring from our law enforcement, as to even enforcing simple routine stops and turning them into drastic situations that can blow up in the media and in our community, when really they should just be helping the people that are being called and everybody involved. Namely, I have a friend named Jeremiah Axtell. He was recently on the news. I haven't spoken with him in years, but I looked him up and actually found him on Google. And what I found was a video by a news agency depicting him very upset at a business close to his residence that had piles of human feces and diapers at a nursing home facility. What transpired after that kind of shocked me. He was detained by the police, cooperating with the police, and apparently I'm hazy on a lot of this. Again, I haven't talked to him in years. This is the first time I've really come to know the situation. They gave him a dose of ketamine, and from what he tells me, actually stopped his heart. The way he put it, they killed him with ketamine. And he came back. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about, but this is news to me. Now, there's been an uprising of people that are fed up with the mistreatment. I believe that's mistreatment to force
30
a
seconds.
medical, to force anything on a citizen that's cooperating with the police that would endanger their lives in such a way just involves a total lack of caring from our law enforcement and our government officials that are supposed to hem down on them to keep them in line. So I hope that everybody on the screen, you all seem like nice, beautiful people actually, can let our law enforcement know that they need to have common courtesy, they need to have self-awareness, and the awareness that people that are cooperating
Your time
don't
is up. If you
deserve
wrap up your
to be
comments,
given drugs. Thank you. I could have gone another 5 minutes, but I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
0558.
Evening 0558. If you give us your name and address or ward and *6, we'll get your time going.
Hello, my name is Nicole Smythe, and I live in Morrison. And I just got word the other day regarding the Bear Creek Dam expansion, and I'm quite upset. No one seems to know much about this. All of the neighbors I've talked to and friends, no one's heard anything about this, and I feel like people need to vote on this. We all love Bear Creek Park, and I understand the need for more water, but I think it should be done somewhere else. There is no other place like Bear Creek Park. I live right across the highway from it, and I often walk my children into the park, and we are a member. We pay every year to join the park. My son is special needs and disabled, and it is one of the only parks around that he can walk on the trails, and it's nice and shaded, and we get to see so much wildlife. We just saw a great horned owl last week, and we do a lot of our science, learning in the park. A lot of parks are very rocky or too hot for him, and so I can take his adaptive chair onto the trails because they're nice and flat. And there's just so much wildlife that we see, and it would just break my heart to flood it out. Like I said, there's no other place like Bear Creek Park that's shaded and woodsy right here in, our neighborhood. So many people use the trails, and I really think that another area could be utilized for this. And I think that the public needs to know more about what's going on. They put up a 5G tower on my road, and I found out that Lakewood got to vote on it, even though the tower is located in Morrison in our neighborhood. Lakewood voted on it because CDOT owned that piece of land. And I just feel it's very unfair that these huge decisions are made without the public knowing about it. So I just beg you to reconsider and find a different area to flood, because Bear Creek is very special, and a lot of animals and people will be affected by this. And that's all I have to say.
Great. Thank you.
Next, we have Corin.
Evening. Give us your name and address or ward. We'll get you started. Star 6 to unmute. Corin, star 6 to unmute.
Hello.
Hello, you're on.
Hi. I would like to go back to the ketamine incident with Jeremiah Axtell. I am a neighbor in the neighborhood and witnessed everything that went down. And I would like to praise Anita Springsteen for her attention to this ongoing issue with ketamine and unfair treatment of people. It's very disturbing to me to live in a neighborhood where people are being profiled and lied to, among other things. I don't have a whole bunch to say about it, but I am very disappointed in the Lakewood Police Department. And that's pretty much what I have to say.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
7064.
All right, 7064. If you press star 6, unmute, give us your name and address or ward. We'll start your 3 minutes.
Yeah, my name is Argenis Alvarenga, and I'm calling in concern to racial profiling being detained by the police department of Lakewood Police. My address is 735 South Harlan Street. And that's in the Ray Ross Park, in front of Ray Ross Park. I'd just like to go ahead and express my concern for the racial profiling that I had encountered with the Lakewood Police back in November. I was just getting a haircut off of the Alameda Crossings neighborhood, little hair salon there. And I got detained. There's like no video footage when I try to get the discovery. And it's pretty concerning because a lot of people, probably get detained. And, if you're getting told by these police officers that you're trying to get, give them information and they're trying to use that against you, and they're trying to go ahead and actually turn around some of your statements, that's pretty concerning, I currently have a case where I'm actually trying to fight this criminal case that I have right now, and it's an ongoing investigation at the moment, but the discovery is like so short and vague, and there's like no video footage. I'm really concerned about how some of your police officers don't have body cams, and there's not even a dash cam video. Like, it gets me pretty upset when I come over from working, 2 jobs, and they try to entice me saying that I'm the one, taking somebody's car, stealing it, and then hitting another person with it. That happened in Denver, in the west part of Denver, where I don't even go to. And then they say that it was me, So it's something that I'd like to go ahead and actually, I took the day off today from my second job to go ahead and express that concern, because it's something that kind of boils my blood about it, when there's no accountability with some of the police officers. So it's just something I wanted to go ahead and express tonight through this town hall meeting. And maybe if there could be a speed of process for some video cams on your dash of your police patrol cars, and maybe some type of body cams on your officers. If you guys get a certain amount of fundings, that'd be great, that you guys can speed up that type of investment on your police officers. If they're, it's just kind of like check and balance,
Gotcha.
So check and balances
your
with.
Time is up, so I appreciate the call, sir. All right.
0256.
All right. 0256. If you give us your name and address, reward, star 6 will unmute. we'll get you started.
Hello, my name's Amir. I'm Ward 2. I called last session, public session, and told my story. I'm also one of the victims of the police, as I was actually the victim of a crime, and then they came and determined that since I was black that they should beat me up and treat me like the suspect. And then after not getting any further facts or asking any of the 4 black witnesses on the scene, they decided to charge me with something. And I find that they often are charging people with crimes to cover up their crime. And then we have to prove that we're innocent as victims, have to prove that, first of all, we're innocent, and then prove that we're a victim, and then try to find justice. And I am just wondering, what are you guys doing? Because cameras are nice, but they'll turn those off, or they'll omit evidence. And it's just, I feel like the system is broken. But even with the broken system, there's things that you can do to fix it. There's precautions that you can put in place. And I would really like to know what you guys want to do about this. Because it's happening apparently everywhere. So what will we do about it here in our home? Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so that looks like that exhausts the list of callers on public comment. All right, I'll close public comment. Certainly Bear Creek Lake Park issue, while we are somewhat a part of it, we're not really the driving force on who's engaging these conversations. So I'd continue to stay involved. In fact, there's a group that our first caller called in, and she's been very active, and I'm drawing a blank on the name of her group, but there is a community group that is engaged and working with the state of Colorado, the Army Corps of Engineers, and probably the federal government on that proposed expansion. And you have all the information I think that we have. And then secondly, certainly take all allegations seriously. Our police department certainly encourages folks to reach out if they feel that there has been an issue and there is an avenue to report those issues and investigations to take place. So I'd encourage you to do that if you felt like there was an incident. And also important to get that through, as well as body cams, which are en route and in our budget, or going to be in our budget, and certainly we'll have those. And I know our police are anxious to get those as well and welcome those moving forward. So we'll start to see those here in the next couple of years. And I think probably sooner rather than later. So thank you. All right, moving on now. It's time for Ms. Hodson for your executive report.
Yes, thank you. And I had intended to give another update on the body-worn camera program. So I'll do that right now, since that's a topic that's been brought up during public comment. So the first stage was the equipment procurement part, and that's already, the vendor's been selected. So that's underway. We also have been working, there's a whole team that's working on this program, and we will be hiring a few staff who will be running the program and also be responsible for making sure the footage is retained. As you remember from the recent law that was passed, there are some real specific guidelines that have to be followed by law. One of the callers said the police won't turn their cameras on. Actually, they have to be on, and that's as determined by law. So the vendor has been selected. The staff is being hired, the additional staff that's needed. We've been able to reassign some existing staff, and then we'll have to hire some additional staff. Once they're in place, there will be a complete department-wide body-worn camera training for everyone in the police department. That will occur during the month of January 2022. and will be at full implementation on March 2022. So that's about 11 months away. It has, as I said, this has been the product of a team, including police department, our IT department, and our finance department, who have put this together. And the finance folks are helping to find those fundings, and we'll explore that and update you on the actual funding at the budget process. Our intent is also to give you a full overview, hopefully when we're back in person, but if not, we'll do it in the virtual sense, and just show you the equipment once we have it, how it works, and go through all of the requirements that are included in that law. So that's underway. Every once in a while, I'll give you an update on the body-worn cameras, as I have done in the past, just to remind you that that's underway. And as you had said, Mayor, the police are anxious to be able to have their interactions recorded. Okay, so let me go to the front. I think, as you know, we've seen a recent outbreak again in our COVID cases, and Jefferson County went from level blue to level yellow, which is a little bit concerning. That has implications as it relates to the closure of City Hall. So what's been decided by our COVID team is that City Hall will remain in the condition it is right now, and that is it will be closed until May 17th at the earliest. The team is meeting every week, and every 2 weeks we'll re-examine where we are on the dial, and we'll make determinations every 2 weeks. So we've been sending communications out to all employees. Remember, some departments are open for drop-in. The other departments are available by appointment only. We're just trying to stay within the guidelines of the health department. If you have any questions or want more information, I'm happy to share that. Just give me a call. We are talking to, thanks to the good work of our human resources folks, we've got data on all of the other counties and all of the other cities in the metro area, telling us what their plans are for reopening. And all of us have kind of had a little bobble in terms of the dial going back to yellow. So, so plans are tentative right now. It looks like most folks are going to do a full opening around June or July, just depending on how we are as it relates to the COVID cases. So I'll keep you updated. At this point, we're going to stay closed or in our current conditions until May 17th at the earliest. And okay, let me do just a few community resources updates. We have set up a Lakewood Together page to accept naming ideas for the site that's formerly known as the Taylor site. So I'd like to direct people to Lakewood Together page on our website to tell us what your ideas are about naming that particular site. There's a really cool exhibit in the North Gallery, and it's Sebeski/Fletcher Miller exhibit in the North Gallery. It's colorful and inspiring. Please come and look at this art exhibit featuring elementary and secondary students. You can RSVP. All this information is available online. And finally, Lakewood kicks off the summer with a free rock and block party on June 4th. We'd love to see you all there. Because of the pandemic, we're having to take reservations. Tickets are released at 6 p.m. on April 15th, and they're free. Just go to lakewood.org/rockandblock. And we just hope that we, as a community, we can all celebrate together. Okay. At your annual planning session, or early on in the year, you directed me to interview facilitators who could do some like team building or communications improvements for the city council. We're calling that a team alignment project. Heather Bergman gave me a name, so I did interview the person that we have never worked with before. I actually didn't know her before our conversation. And I'll be meeting with the mayor and the mayor pro tem to discuss the logistics. the timing's not wonderful, so we'll work through what those logistics are, and I'll come back and report to you in terms of an update on whatever we want to call that project, the team alignment or whatever, as it relates to communications with City Council. Also, at your annual planning session, you as a group agreed to put together a committee that will review the SGI, the Strategic Growth Initiative, now that that's been in place for what now, a year and a half now. The whole idea was just to look through it now that it's been in place and to clean up any areas that need to be cleaned up or unintended kind of problems we've had. I believe Councilor Abel brought that up, and all of you agreed to that. What we've done in the meantime is asked our new city attorney to take a full review of the SGI so that she can be helpful during the council committee work. So Allison is working with Travis and our planning staff just to go through it all and to make sure she has a real good sense so she can be a resource as well to this upcoming committee. Now I want to talk about federal funding. As you know, the American Rescue Plan was actually approved. It was voted on and approved. The state of Colorado gets $4.1 billion. Congressional District 7 gets $316 million. And Lakewood will receive $22 million. The guidelines for those dollars haven't been released yet from the U.S. Treasury. We anticipate that happening in May. Again, state is $4.1 billion, CD7 is $316 million, and Lakewood will receive $22 million in 2 tranches. One in May and then one a year after that. The way we're handling the Lakewood's allocation is, first, staff is making a group of recommendations for how we would like to see. We're going to recommend to you some ways to think about those dollars, and they will be categorized like this: infrastructure, technology equipment, community support, and sustainability. So those will be our recommendations to you. Then it goes to the Budget and Audit Board in great detail, just to talk about those different categories to see if those are agreeable with the board, or if there are other categories that we ought to be thinking about. And then finally, it'll go to all of City Council for approval. So be thinking about those $22 million. And of course, it's not an annualized thing, it's a one-time. So we have to be really thoughtful about how those dollars are spent. And we'll come to you after the Budget and Audit Board. Don't forget, whether you're on the committee or not, or whether you're on the board or not, you're welcome to attend those meetings, and we encourage it as well. And then we'll have a real broad public conversation following that at a City Council meeting. So I wanted to make sure you all heard that. There are also, just to make things complicated, there are also numerous other funding opportunities that cover different program areas coming from the Fed. So these are different dollars. For example, Head Start funding, support for older Americans, homeless assistance and support services. We were on a call with Congressman Perlmutter, and actually Councilor Gutwein asked about the homeless opportunities, and Congressman Perlmutter responded that those HUD dollars will be coming, and that's accurate. FEMA performance grants funding, shuttered venue operations, local fiscal recovery funds, coronavirus capital projects funds, and community project funding. So there are all kinds of different funds coming from the feds that cover different areas, and we're working within all of those to make sure Lakewood residents receive the portion that they deserve. So that's a lot of information, and if you want more, I'm happy to share it. We also have a list of all of the other agencies. Like Jefferson County, during the Rescue Act, they get $113 million. And you might want to hear Jefferson County School District will get $72 million. So that gives you a sense for the dollars that are being infused into the community, and where we need to be thoughtful and really smart about the way we spend those in Lakewood. And that's our intent, is to do this in a real thoughtful manner and to be as inclusive as possible, because this is a great opportunity for us. So with that, I did those kind of out of order because I wanted to do the body cams first. But with that, I believe that concludes my report. So thank you.
Great. Well done, Ms. Hodson. A lot of great information.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, moving up next, the emergency declaration. And as kind of heard a little bit, we've gone backwards from blue to yellow. And continue, I guess what they would say is the fourth wave. And so we'll continue in this status. I do think the governor was trying to dismiss the dial mid-month, and we don't know if that dial goes away, if something replaces it. There's still a lot of questions and a lot of uncertainty. So, Mayor Pro Tem?
I move to extend the declaration of disaster in the city of Lakewood, Colorado, resulting from the coronavirus/COVID-19 pandemic, pursuant to section 1.27 of the Lakewood Municipal Code, originally declared by proclamation of the Lakewood City Manager on March 17, 2020, extended by majority vote of the City Council on multiple occasions, and by this motion, extended again until April 26, 2021, unless earlier extended or terminated by the City Council.
Second.
Thank you. A motion is second. Any questions? All right, no questions. Any comments? Councilor Johnson?
This is difficult. I will no longer be voting to extend the emergency proclamation. For the last few months, I have become increasingly concerned about this whole issue of federal funding. I can no longer vote to put our children and grandchildren in unconscionable debt. As long as the states, the counties, and the cities have their hand out, we are part of the growing financial morass our country is finding itself in. I will be voting no. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, with that, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. Right, that passes 9 ayes, 2 nays, the nays being Johnson and Springsteen. Okay, next up is the consent agenda. The use of the consent agenda has been made to expedite council action. It contains both resolutions and first reading ordinances. Resolutions are items of routine nature. Members of the public will have an opportunity in a moment to comment on any of the resolutions, which there is one, 2021-14. First reading ordinances appear on the agenda only for the purpose of setting future public hearing dates and ordering the newspaper publication of the proposed ordinance. No public comments will be heard this evening on first reading ordinances. The public will have the opportunity to comment on the proposed ordinances during the scheduled public hearings on the date set tonight by City Council. Any council member may request an item on the consent agenda be removed for separate discussion and action under general business. Will the clerk please read the consent agenda into the record?
Item 6, Resolution 2021-14, endorsing amendment to Lakewood 2021-2022 Head Start Grant application for purpose of submitting requests to federal government for supplemental funds available to provide a cost of living adjustment to staff in Head Start and Early Head Start. Item 7, Ordinance O-2021-9, an ordinance approving a supplemental appropriation to the 2021 annual budget in the amount of $93,800 from the Colorado Auto Theft Prevention Authority and single source purchases in excess of $50,000 of license plate readers, steering wheel immobilizers, surveillance equipment, and bait vehicle equipment. Item 8, approving minutes of city council meetings, specifically the March 22nd, 2021 regular meeting and the March 15th, 2021 special meeting. Item 9, accepting minutes of boards and commissions. The LAC Executive Committee meeting on March 3rd, 2021, and the LAC Full Commission meeting February 17th, 2021.
Thank you, sir. I'll open the public comment on Resolution 2021-14, which is the Head Start grant. I see nobody in the queue. I'll close public comment. I'll ask for a motion on the consent agenda.
Mayor, I move for the approval of the minutes of the City Council and acceptance of the minutes of the boards and commissions, for adoption of resolutions, and order all ordinances introduced on first reading to be published in the Denver Post, with public hearings set for the date included in the ordinance, all of which are included in the consent agenda items introduced into the record by the city clerk.
Second.
Motion is second. Any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, please cast your votes on the consent agenda. That passes 11 ayes, 0 nays. Thank you very much. I will now open the public hearing on ordinance 2021-8 and ask the clerk to please read it into the record.
Item 10, ordinance O-2021-8, an ordinance repealing and reenacting certain provisions of Title 14 of the Lakewood Municipal Code to adopt by reference the 2020 edition of the National Electrical Code, including Annex C and including Annex H with amendments, and establishing the penalties therefore.
Okay, I'll now open public comment on this item. There was a quick short presentation, about 2 minutes for council that came on today, and there's also some supplemental information as to kind of how we got here and how we move forward. Is there anybody in public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment. Are there any questions? Seeing none, Mayor Pro Tem, I'll ask for a motion.
I move for the adoption of ordinance 2021-8 on second and final reading.
Second.
Right, motion in a second. Any comments? I just have one comment, and that is, this is important for the community, and I would like to just take a moment to thank the Board of Appeals, who actually reviews this, and they may not always be very busy, but when they do have issues, they're pretty complicated, and we certainly thank them for their expertise and their guidance on these types of matters. So with that, if there's no more questions or comments, please cast your votes. Okay, passes 11 ayes, 0 nays. So now I went a little backwards on that last one. Mr. Rome, I'll ask you to read in item 11, and then I'll open the public hearing.
Item 11, ordinance O-2021-7, an ordinance endorsing the recommended projects and funding levels for the 2021 action plan for the Community Development Block Grant Program.
Okay, I'll open public comment on this item. It does not look like anybody's in there. Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Are there any questions on item 11? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask Mayor Pro Tem for a motion.
I move for the adoption of ordinance 2021-7 on second and final reading.
Second.
Motion and second. Any comments? I'd just like to thank Amy Dietnicker and her team over there for their hard work on this. These are incredibly important programs that help a lot of folks that are impacted and in need in our community. So happy to support this going forward tonight. Okay. Please cast your votes. 11 ayes and 0 nays. Thank you. a feeling that this next one will not go as fast. So I'll ask the clerk to please read in item 12.
Item 12, ordinance O-2020-10, student living definition and zoning ordinance.
All right, thank you. So council, as we proceed forward, I'd like to start with questions. So if you have a couple questions, and kind of like we've been doing, we'll go through the council before I ask for a motion on this subject. Also, there are some sensitivities as this is a legal matter, so Ms. McKinney-Brown may not be able to answer some of those questions in open session, but I think council has sent in quite a few questions over the last few weeks, and hopefully that has been helpful as well. Mayor Pro Tem, your hand is up.
I just wanted to maybe clarify either for the public or maybe this is a hybrid question that the university use, all the things the university can and cannot do in certain zone districts remains in the code and is not subject to our discussion tonight. My understanding is student living units exist in the code. It's merely an undefined term. And so the question presented to us is this the proper definition of student living units? Not being asked to remove that from the use or change the tables or do any of those things. And I also will be offering a short amendment of 6 words when the time is appropriate.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Abel, your hand was up and then there it is.
Thank you, Mayor. This question has only to do with the restoration of a definition of student housing units, student living units in the definition part of our zoning ordinance. As the mayor pointed out, the Mayor Pro Tem pointed out, there already are regulations providing guardrails in the body of our zoning ordinance and addresses college and university use, student living units being one of those, and they are prohibited in this in the zone district in question under our existing ordinance. We're not here tonight to judge the constitutionality or any other matter relating to this issue. It is simply whether we should restore a definition that was removed with when council approved the 2013 zoning ordinance changes, but it was not brought to crystal clear attention that this definition had been removed. So Denver has a similar definition. It might be one we want to consider. If so, I will be happy to read what it says later in the discussion. Most cities that have colleges and universities also have restraints on student housing, and frankly, there are not many instances that I could find where colleges and universities buy off-campus properties to put to house their students in. So I think it's merely cleaning up an inadvertent deletion from the code that was made a few years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. And so just real quick, I want to make sure that we get any questions answered. Okay. I don't see any questions. So Mayor Pro Tem, I'm going to have you go ahead and make a motion, and then we can get into amendments and things along those lines.
Mayor, I move for the adoption of ordinance 2021-10 on second and final reading.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion, a second. Councilor Johnson.
My fault. I didn't get my hand up quickly enough. I actually do have a question. during the 2012 rewrite of the zoning ordinance, do we know, prior to that vote, was there any communication between CCU and anyone in the city? Do we know if that ever occurred? Does anybody know?
So, I mean, prior, I mean, I think there's probably communication throughout different aspects, but I don't know if they were part of the rewrite process or anything along those lines. I don't know if they were stakeholders, but Mr. Parker, do you recall anything?
I don't recall any specific conversations with CCU about the update of the zoning code. At that same time, during that same year, CCU was doing their own plan development for their campus. So they were going through zoning changes on their campus at that same time. So there was a lot of conversation about that process. I don't know that they had any conversation specific to the overall city result.
Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, do you want to discuss your amendment?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Just because we heard, and I don't know, this has been a long process. It started a long time ago, development dialogue. We had a packed house. We've had different, obviously city council meetings on this, but one thing that we did hear is perhaps some absurd results or unintended consequences. And who knows if they would actually come true, but one cleanup item could be, you could say a dwelling unit that is owned or controlled by a college or university and inhabited by students, and here would be the change, enrolled in that college or university who are related or unrelated. There was a question about if a university owns a house across town or some other property, then no students could ever be there. And so this goes back to that idea that's in the code, or even in this definition, owned or controlled, and it goes back to university use. It would be only applicable to students that are enrolled in that university. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a university use. So those are the 6 words.
Okay, and just for clarification, we're going to have to reread, withdraw that motion. I think it was read wrong. Although, hold on. Yeah, you said 2021 instead of 2020. Remember, this has been a holdover. So we were just wrong on the year. So Councilor Vincent, if you want to withdraw your second, and
I withdraw my second.
And let's just restate that motion as 2020-10. Thank you, Mr. Clerk, for catching that.
I move for the adoption of ordinance 2020-10 on second and final reading.
Second.
Great. Okay. Motion and second on, and so there was the explanation on the amendment. I guess I just have one question on that, and that has to, the absurd result is I understand where you're going with that, but does that still negate? You're still singling out a certain use that some folks can have and some can't. And I think at the end of the day, that boils down to what the issue is. You still could allow for that use as Dave Skilling, and you could still allow for that use if you were Red Rocks Community College or another type of person renting to another student, but not not another certain group within the neighborhood. So I guess, long story short, is that still, not discriminatory?
Well, if I may.
Yeah, please.
It comes back to my initial comments or question that I made at first, which is this is the exercise in defining what our current code has as student living units under the university use. So I was just offering this to clarify that if you are going to have, which we do, and again, the discussion is just what is our definition of student living units? And within the context of how this is used in our code in defining what a university use is, because in that code section, and Mr. Parker, correct me if I'm wrong, we do give and I've got it somewhere on my computer, but I've got a lot of things open. There's a litany of things that are used as examples for university use. And student living units is merely one of those including but not limited to. So within the context of what a university uses something for, we just want to be clear that it's not that they can't rent to any student of wherever they go to school, no matter what college owns it. If Red Rocks owns it, they can rent to a CCU student or what have you, because Red Rocks isn't using that property to house students or as a student living unit. So it just clarifies that it's the university in question is actually using it to do a thing. It comes back to the use question. And again, just trying to be clear, because we did hear a lot, I think, from all sides on this, that maybe there were some of these, we got into a lot of hypotheticals. What if this happens? What if that happens? And this is just one way of attacking that problem. But I do understand your point there. I get it. This is why I prefaced everything with, we're on a definition exercise here.
Great. Thank you. Councilor Abel?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, Denver has one of these. Colorado Springs has one of these. There are a lot of guardrails put up to keep campus living intact on the campus and protect the integrity of nearby neighborhoods. But that is really not what's at issue. Whether it's, and it is not covered by the Fair Housing Act. It's not covered by RLUPA, which is only in effect for something that we might put into land use that would prohibit the exercise of religion. We're not doing that with this. I would say that if the terms don't suit CCU can ask the city for rezoning. And that even if we have a groundswell of feeling on council that we need to change that piece of the zoning ordinance tonight, I don't think we can do it because we didn't announce that that's what we were going to look at. So again, this is just about the use, not the ownership, but the use of these off-campus houses. So, and there is concern about zoning creep, that as the school reaches out farther and farther to the east and buys more and more properties in neighborhoods, that they'll just move their campus housing farther and farther to the east. So again, it is, I think Mr. Skilling's amendment puts us on more firm ground and is well worded and eliminates the vagaries. But the question is, should staff decisions override or eliminate legislation put in place by city council? There were no red lines of that document because it was so lengthy, but council did not realize that this definition had been left out when they voted on it. So anyway, thank you.
Councilor Springsteen?
Well, I just wanted to reiterate that this problem has been ongoing for 4 years now, and I would really insist on the old definition of student living unit. I went to DU for a couple of my degrees, and I remember student housing around the university, but that was privately rented. It was not part of the university. It was not a dormitory situation. And that's really what we're talking about here, is the use. To reiterate what Councilor Abel is saying, the use, not the ownership. of these properties. And this issue was solved in 2003. And then it was unsolved in 2012. And we could have solved it 4 years ago. And for whatever reason, we keep putting off solving it. And I think it was very disrespectful to these folks in this neighborhood at our last meeting discussing this, to put it last on the agenda, to put it off, to not allow public comment on it tonight at a time when we're trying to make decisions about it. Let's just fix this. Let's fix this problem once and for all, which means let's do the fix that was already fixed in 2003. Thanks.
Councilor Gutwein.
Thank you. So, a couple of things. This issue has been going on for many years, and I know it was several years ago that I first started meeting with some of the neighbors about this and had coffee, and I still have the original packet that they gave me. So I know that they'd been working on it for, frankly, decades before that. So appreciate that there's a really long history here. I really want to I think that the real question for me is this kind of the argument about we're regulating the use, but I don't understand the argument that's being made, because what we're still getting at, we're regulating the use depending on who the owner is. Because if you have the CCU is the owner, this definition would say they cannot rent it to students, but any other owner could. And my understanding is that that is not legal. And I know that that was done in the past. I was not on the council in the past. I, realize that's caused a lot of confusion, understandably, and a lot of frustration. But my understanding is that it's pretty black and white that we cannot regulate based on this use. Further, I did my own research, and I found this issue all over, not just the state, but all over the country. And there are examples all over of cities that are dealing with this issue where the university is buying up properties and has students living in them. And it creates a lot of frustration. We're not the only ones dealing with this. There's not a really great way to address it, because the neighborhood agreement, my understanding is it's not incredibly enforceable, or it's not enforceable. And so, this is a really tough one. But for me, I am not going to vote to do something that my understanding is it's not legal. So, thank you.
Councilor Bita, then Councilor LeBeer.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things. There is a long history on this. This discussion's been going on even before I got on council, and we have had numerous meetings. I sat through all of the meetings that we had with the Development Dialogue Committee, and we had open meetings with many public comments. I mean, we spent, I think, as I recall, one meeting that was entirely public comments, if I recall. We got very little business done, but just public comments. So I do think that it's disingenuous now to say that we have to go back to what was there before, just because it was done, sort of without the understanding of council and without adequate public comment and input from the neighborhood. That may have been true at one time, and certainly 4 years ago, that might have been a reason to say, well, let's go back to square one and go from there. But we're way past that now. And I think that there has been more than adequate input from the community and from the neighbors on this issue. And I will say I'm very sympathetic to the neighbors. I understand their concerns, but we do have some limitations too. I am going to support this very reluctantly, because I will tell you, I don't think this is going to be the end to it like people think it is. It's not going to be the end. We're going to be dealing with this again and still for quite a while. So I am going to vote for it very reluctantly, because I am sympathetic with the neighbors, but it's a tough call. That's all.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor LeBaire.
Thank you. I think I would agree with what Councilor Beta said, quite a bit of that. I'm a little, I'm concerned that, this will continue. I've looked at cases out in the East Coast and places like New York. Obviously, they have different state laws in place, but ways that I've seen a lot of university towns deal with this type of issue is not the way that we're talking about today. It seems like what a lot of cities have done to try to rein in some of the issues similar to this is that they've done some sort of special university type overlay in these type of neighborhoods that are more restrictive, less parking allowed, less unrelated persons per household, that sort of thing, and basically more restrictive. That's probably in the long term the only actual way we're going to be able to deal with some of these challenges. But so I hate to give false hope to the neighbors, but maybe supporting this might be one small step. I don't know, but just want to share that. I don't think it's over either. Thanks.
Councilor Harrison.
Thank you. I will not be supporting this. In my research, it looks like this is not going to be something that a court system would support. So I can't, in good faith, pass something that's going to end up in court for various different reasons. So I will not be supporting this, even though I am sympathetic to the neighbors. Very sorry, but I can't pass something that's going to cause problems. Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Skilling.
Just one point, again, coming back to the definition thing, as we sit here tonight, the student living units are prohibited as a university use in the R2 district, as we sit here tonight. The definition we pass, whether it's this one or some slight amendment or whatever, doesn't change that at all. In fact, it gives at least some definition to what people could argue is an ambiguous 3 words. But if there was some, as I think somebody mentioned before, some groundswell to totally change what the university use definitions are, well, that's a different discussion. But I don't think anything changes whether we adopt this tonight or not. It's the same. The prohibition still exists as it did tonight, last week, a year ago, 2 years ago, and as it would tomorrow, regardless of if we change or add this definition or not. Unless I have that completely wrong, we're just defining something that is an existing prohibition. We're just making it a little bit clearer. And whether we're right today or wrong today, we were in the same position either way. It's the same thing. But again, maybe I'm wrong with that. I'm just trying to clarify when we start talking about what's legal and illegal and what we're doing here tonight. I'm not sure that having a clear definition puts us or anyone else in some kind of legal peril. That would be a question for a later day if somebody wants to remove that prohibition. It's my understanding of it. And again, I'm usually wrong, so if somebody wants to clarify for me.
So, Mayor Pro Tem, I'm going to ask Ms. McKinney-Brown if she can maybe address that, and if this does, in fact, by instituting this definition, if it does actually change something more than just a definition.
Mayor, I'm hearing, and I have listened very carefully to all of the comments that the city council members have made during the meetings, the questions that they've asked me, and I've listened carefully to or read the emails that the members of the community have written. But every person I've heard speaking about this issue is looking at it from an independent perspective. And I think it's a pretty black and white issue. And I've made that clear to you in attorney-client privilege communications, and my opinion doesn't change. My concern about making any kind of public statement is anything I say can and will be held against you in a court of law. So I think at this point, you know my legal interpretation of this matter, and you'll have to factor that into your broad decision making.
Thank you for that. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. Well, you're right. This is an issue that won't go away. First, I really want to publicly state that I am a true supporter of CCU and their quality of education, their mission, and their values that they provide for their fortunate students. They are unparalleled in the Denver area with what they're doing there. And we are truly fortunate that CCU chose Lakewood to call home, and that we have this exceptional university right here in the heart of Lakewood, actually. CCU is an integral part in this entire community. But a little background information I think is needed regarding our current situation. This issue's been out there for 20 years. In 2003, the City Council, CCU, and the surrounding neighborhood worked hard to come to a consensus regarding inserting a definition into the zoning ordinance regarding student living units. And it can't be overstated that all three entities had their own attorney as part of that process, and everyone signed off to insert the definition regarding student living unit into the zoning ordinance. And it was passed by the City Council at that time. During the rewrite of the zoning ordinance in 2012, the definition of student living unit was deleted. This deletion was never told to council or redlined prior to the vote of that updated ordinance. And the rewritten zoning ordinance, it passed also on an 8-3 vote. I did not learn of this deletion until the neighborhood brought it to my attention in about 2016. Later, I was told by staff that, quote, it was no longer needed, and that's why it was taken out. In March of 2020, I introduced a change to our zoning ordinance, which is what we're dealing with right now, in order to reinsert the original definition of student living unit back into our zoning ordinance. And it passed on that first reading. Ideally, this vote would have happened when everyone could testify in person. But unfortunately, that's not the case, so here we are. This issue is not about who owns the site, but about how it is used. And I believe this is supported, it was my understanding, by our legal update. Lakewood nor any city staff can decide unilaterally to change what a council voted on. Reinstatement of this definition should be really very obvious. It should go back into our zoning ordinance. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, did you want to move forward on your amendment?
Well, I talked enough about it. I might as well introduce it. I can vote up or down on it. So I'd move to amend the existing draft definition to read A dwelling unit that is owned or controlled by a college or university and inhabited by students enrolled in that college or university who are related or unrelated.
Second.
Okay, motion is second, just on the amendment. Just on the amendment. Any questions to the amendment? Okay, seeing none, please cast your votes. And that amendment passes, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 5 nays. The nays being Johnson, Paul, Gutwein, Harrison. Is that it? Oh, there you are. So, no, just keep them up. Some of these backgrounds are tough. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 nays. The nays being Johnson, Paul, Gutwein, Harrison. Okay. So, to the original motion, or do you want to make a motion as amended?
I would defer. I think we read it because we removed it and we read it back in because I made the clerical error and I said 2021, so I reread it in. So do we circle back around and just reread it in and say as amended?
2020-10 as amended.
Okay. Then I move for the adoption of ordinance 2020-10 as amended.
Second.
Okay. Motion is second. Any final comments on 2020-10? I do have certainly a final comment, and that would be, as somebody who's had the opportunity to work with the neighborhood and understand their concerns, as well as CCU, this is not an easy situation. And there's been a lot of time and effort put in to trying to bring the community together, as sometimes with these gray areas, it's not a governmental fix. And, you know, certainly we've heard from our attorney, black and white, as she had said, the issues that we are facing. And at the end of the day, you know, there's been some things that have been said, but a duplex is a duplex, and regulating ownership as to whether I could own a duplex and rent it to students or another person can't just does not sit well with me, as much as I understand the neighborhood's concerns. And they are concerned about CCU, and they're concerned about the creep of the campus. And we certainly share that, but I really cannot go forward and put our city and our community in jeopardy by supporting this, knowing that it is discriminatory against an owner. And it does come down to that. And so I cannot go forward with that. And I appreciate everybody's time and energy, especially the neighborhood. And I would like to say, you know, there's been allegations of staff nefariously leaving things out. That's not fair. That's a shot from the cheap seats, and it's not appropriate. You know, this ordinance was voted on by a council and put into law. And so I don't think that has anything to do with it. And it's a continuation of a fabrication. So with that, please cast your votes. Actually, all right, and that looks like it passes. Or let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it does fail. 5 to 6. The 6 nays being Paul, Gutwein, Franks. Okay, I'm confused. Hold on. So please just keep them up. The backgrounds, like they're screwed up for me to see. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 nays, 5 yays. The 6 nays being Paul, Gutwein, Franks, Vincent, and Harrison. So no, that's flipped. I have 5 nays and 6 ayes. So there's nays still being the same. Paul, Gutwein, Franks, Vincent, and Harrison. Okay. All right. Anything under general business? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go to reports. I'll start in Ward 1.
No report.
You know, I would just like to say that this last weekend I went to a luncheon with the United States Marine Corps. They are fundraising for their memorial park out there that's at 6th and Colfax. And it was a beautiful ceremony. It's ongoing, their fundraising. And they are really trying to honor not only the Marines that have perished and are vets, but actually all veterans in our community. And my kudos goes out to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Ward 2.
Yeah, I just want to mention our Ward 2 meeting is on Wednesday, April 14th, 6 o'clock. We're going to be talking about sustainability, so looking forward to seeing everyone there.
I have nothing else to add. No report.
Great, thanks. Ward 3.
Defer to my ward mate.
This week, we are moving our Ward 3 meeting from the 4th Saturday to the 3rd, as we have said we're going to do occasionally. So we will be moving our ward meeting to this Saturday, the 17th at 9 a.m. I also wanted to make a statement about something because of some of the occurrences going on in our nation right now. As we watch the George Floyd trial in Minneapolis and hear the death of Dante Wright in a suburb like Lakewood, Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, it becomes clear that Lakewood cannot continue to ignore flaws in our own policing system that would set us on a collision course with similar events. We don't want the National Guard in Lakewood. Amir Allen, an African-American gentleman, called into meetings to tell of his claim of police brutality during his arrest on February 26th. Representative Leslie Herod told me during a meeting today that this is very concerning to her, even as we discuss police reform legislation she's introducing on ketamine and other issues. There will be a rally not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday on the stairs of the Capitol concerning her legislation on ketamine before she introduces it. Victor Averanga, who grew up in Lakewood, called in tonight to tell his claim of racial profiling as a Hispanic man. Although victims of a carjacking told Denver police that Victor was not the perpetrator, Lakewood police arrested him anyway for disobeying a police officer. He says he had earbuds on and could not hear the officer talking to him. We heard this week about the death of Jason Waterhouse at the hands of Lakewood police in 2019 as he was having a mental health episode and his loved ones had called to ask for help. I have a question about why council was not alerted to this potential litigation. I personally have been speaking out about concerns with policy ever since my own boyfriend, Jeremiah Axtell, was forcibly injected with ketamine during a Lakewood police encounter in January 2020, when he was cooperating and already restrained in cuffs. Jeremiah died from the injection on the way to the hospital that day and had to be revived. And I don't know if a lot of people understand that, but that's what happened. I cannot help but think that if anybody had listened to me about Jeremiah, that Amir and Victor would not have experienced what they did. Instead, I was met with disbelief and accusations and the illegal interference by members of this council in the fair prosecution of Jeremiah's case, and attempts to use it politically to force me to resign when I did nothing wrong. This is to announce that all 7 of the charges the Lakewood police charged Jeremiah with were dismissed by the Jefferson County District Attorney before the case even got to trial. There was no viable evidence of violence or threat with a knife. All police charges were unfounded, and thankfully justice prevailed in this dismissal. justice has not prevailed in terms of ketamine injuries to both Jeremiah and many, many, many other people in this county. It would have been so nice if you all had reserved judgment on these accusations until you knew the facts and had supported a fellow counselor. I beg you to be kind to the community and do the right thing and help me look at how to address some of these problems we have within our community before we become the next Brooklyn Center, please. Everyone asked me to make a statement about what occurred with Jeremiah, which I can now do, and I will do at length in writing. But to have experienced the near loss of a loved one at the hands of police as a counselor shows that nobody is safe from this potential loss. How many mothers have to lose their sons the way Elijah McClain and Dante Wright's mothers did? And George Floyd, by the way, as we're listening to the trial go on and on about these issues. We have to address these issues. The last thing I want to say is people are being silenced on these meetings. I know for a fact that a constituent who was pooling time last week was trying to call in over and over again, as she's someone who knows how to call in, and she was never able to get in. Tonight, I know of a doctor who is also not a stupid person who kept texting me asking why she couldn't get in. And so I am going to say, a year after we've started these meetings like this, why can we not figure out the technology to let people speak? And what I'm going to suggest is I'm gonna either use my own personal phone or get a phone from the city so that citizens can call in and give their public comment like they should be able to. And I beg all of you, have the courage to help me with these endeavors, with these rights that people have that are being violated. Thank you.
Word 4.
My only report is that today, with July 4th coming up, I know that LAC is looking at the fireworks issue, but it's coming up pretty fast, and I don't know if they're going to be back in time. So Barb and I have submitted a legislative tweak request that I assume will be coming at some point. We just submitted it today, and all it does is examine whether we can raise the penalties. Or look at how penalties are being issued, and so we can, given what we had during Super Bowl, property damage, everything we saw last year, there's nothing to suggest we won't have that issue again. So that will be coming, and again, it's just a minor tweak of looking at penalties, enhanced fines, something to get the word out that if you're going to launch mortars in the Lakewood neighborhoods, and you get caught, there's going to be a price to pay, a much steeper price than there is now. At least that would be the discussion. We had asked that Judge Stavig, Chief McCaskey, hopefully can provide some input into what we can do, and we'll see. So that is all.
Great, thank you. Word 5.
No report from me.
Cool. Okay. So I had the opportunity to visit Porchlight Family Justice Center, and what an incredible program that is for Jefferson County. Over 70 different providers, and it's really pretty cool to see the uniqueness. While I was there, Adams County was touring the district attorney's office, and some of their electeds were touring to see how Jefferson County was able to put that together. And there were a lot of compliments to Ms. Hodson and Chief McCaskey and the city of Lakewood's help in getting Porchlight started. If you haven't had the chance, try to go visit that. It is very impressive. It's a safe place for folks of violence to go and receive a ton of different services, from Foothills Animal Shelter to Family Tree, remote court services, and in the future has a lot of other opportunities for them. I've started up my coffee with the mayor, and it is virtual, but that's kind of cool because it allows me to do morning and evening coffee. So I'll have one coming up, and I'll let you know next Monday, but I think it's a week from Thursday. and there'll be information going out on Nextdoor, as well as the Friday report for that. And then we have Earth Day coming up, and as always, our cool sustainability group has some fun stuff that's going to go on, and it's going to be virtual again. And so I appreciate all that. And I'd like to say, you know, as a city of 160,000, we're certainly not a perfect community, but I take great pride in what we do and how we do it. And we do have an incredible police department. Not to say that any human organization is going to make mistakes, but also challenging to have one side be able to be told and not the other. And that's not to be dismissive of anybody's situation that they've seen. But I think it's also disingenuous to compare certain situations with tragic events when they're not even able to talk about the whole thing and what took place. And so it strikes a nerve with me, because whenever there's an issue, I encourage the community to engage. And I'd encourage this council to take note and also to find out what processes the police department does take place, or that they do have in line with any sort of use of force. If there's a use of force, there doesn't even have to be a complaint by a person to engage. The police department on any use of force investigates itself first off the bat. And I think it would go a long way for folks to engage and to learn more about our processes and how we do different things. And I can't say it enough. If you're going to call, it's important for you to take the time to engage in the investigation. If we don't have help investigating those investigations, they're not going to go anywhere. But I know that we take great pride. We're not perfect. We're going to continue to do the right thing. And we've been put in some challenging situations, and it continues to be a challenging position. And again, I'm proud, and I will leave it at that for the evening. So with that, if there's nothing else, I will, Ms. Hodson, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to make one point, and that is, as I told you several weeks ago, we are scheduling a tour for all of City Council to go and see Porchlight. I expressed that to you after the grand opening. We're working with the executive director there and trying to find a date to do that that's after the hours for them, so we're not interrupting their operations, but we'll also give all of you a really good sense for all of the incredible services that they offer under one roof. So I know that our deputy city manager and our city clerk are both working on that date, and you'll get additional information as it becomes available. I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And I guess I just want to reemphasize this. We're not at liberty when there's pending litigation for us to be able to talk about certain instances. And that is quite challenging, as you can matter, for all folks involved. And so it's easy when you're on one side to be able to make the allegations. But when we can't talk about it because of pending litigation, it makes it that much more challenging. So, all right. I will adjourn the meeting at 8:33.